Imagine walking up to an ATM in the middle of the night, and instead of needing a card or PIN, the machine just starts spitting out cash on command. Sounds like a movie, right? But it really happened. Hackers across the world figured out how to hijack entire ATM networks, turning banks into their own personal slot machines. From Russia to Europe to the US, it became a global cybercrime wave that cost banks millions and left authorities scrambling to catch up. If you were walking by and saw an ATM pouring out money into the street, would you grab some or call the cops? Drop your answer in the comments. Let's see where you stand. It started quietly in a dimly lit back street of Moscow in 2010. The surveillance footage, later leaked, shows an ordinary-looking man in a hooded jacket walking toward an ATM just before midnight. He doesn't insert a card. He doesn't touch the keypad. He just stands there, phone in hand, tapping quickly. And then, impossibly, the machine begins to whir. The cash tray opens with a mechanical sigh, and bills start sliding out. Not a few, not a glitch refunding someone's card, but a continuous stream of rubles piling onto the cold pavement. The man doesn't panic. He calmly picks up the notes, stuffing them into a duffel bag with methodical precision. He looks up at the camera once, almost like a taunt, before walking away. The next morning, when the bank staff checked the machine, they thought it was a malfunction. Machines jam. They miscount. But when 3 other ATMs in the city had the exact same glitch within days, the truth became harder to ignore. Someone had figured out how to make ATMs spit out money like broken vending machines at first. The banks blamed insiders, maybe a rogue technician or a crooked employee with system access. But the pattern didn't match. These weren't machines being opened or tampered with physically. They were being controlled remotely, like puppets, on invisible strings. The press gave it a nickname, jackpotting, because when it happened, the ATMs behaved like slot machines on a winning streak, dumping everything inside. What no one knew at the time was that this wasn't just one hacker in Moscow. This was the beginning of a global wave that would ripple across continents. The software loophole they had discovered was so simple, yet so devastating, that entire banking systems would soon be forced to confront it. Banks are built on trust. Trust that when you put your card in, the machine knows who you are. Trust that the vault inside the ATM can't be emptied without authorization. But these hackers weren't breaking in with crowbars or explosives. They were using pure code. Commands sent remotely, sometimes even through infected USB sticks, that rewired the ATM's brain to obey. By 2013, videos began circulating on dark web forums. Hooded figures standing in front of machines in Berlin, in Bangkok, in Mexico City, calmly collecting stacks of bills that the machine decided to hand over. No alarms triggered. No accounts drained. The cash came straight from the ATM's own reserves. It was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. The first hacker crew to claim responsibility online called themselves Cobalt. They bragged openly in underground chat rooms, posting photos of money piles on hotel beds. Their message was clear. Banks are not as secure as they want you to believe. And they weren't lying. Interpol would later admit that the tools used to carry out jackpotting could be coded by any skilled programmer with an understanding of ATM operating systems. These machines weren't designed to defend against such attacks because nobody had ever imagined it was possible, but someone had. And they weren't about to stop. The man in Moscow with the duffel bag had lit a fuse. The sparks were already spreading, and the world's financial institutions were about to realize just how fragile their machines really were. Banks called it a malfunction. Police called it a localized incident. Hackers called it proof of concept. Within months, similar clips surfaced from 3 continents. A man in a baseball cap in Bangkok, calmly filling a backpack while an ATM poured baht like a burst pipe. Two figures in hoodies in Berlin, taking turns at a machine that behaved as if the withdrawal limit were a fairy tale. A quiet street in Mexico City where bills fluttered onto the sidewalk like leaves. No cards, no PINs, no smashed panels. Just machines obeying invisible instructions. The pattern changed, and that's how investigators knew this wasn't a one-off. In Moscow, the cash-out had been solitary. In Europe and Latin America, it was synchronized. Multiple ATMs in different districts began paying out within minutes of each other, as if a conductor somewhere had tapped a baton and the metal orchestra had responded in perfect time. Banks started assigning names to the events. Cash out, waves, jackpot runs, sprays. Internal memos warned branch managers to power down machines at the first sign of abnormal dispensing. The instructions sounded confident on paper. On the street, confidence meant very little. By the time a night guard noticed a machine humming too long, someone with a duffel bag had already vanished into the dark. What made the spree so hard to stop wasn't just the code. It was the choreography. There were the operators, the ones with the keyboards, who rarely came within a block of a bank. And there were the cashers, ordinary-looking people recruited for one-night jobs. Stand here. At this time, follow the signal. Take what comes out. Don't ask questions. Cashers changed phones weekly, cities monthly, and names as often as needed. Even when police grabbed one, the trail led nowhere. The operator stayed out of reach, speaking in messages that deleted themselves and coordinating across time zones. Like air traffic controllers of a storm, only they could see. Banks fought back. They updated software, rotated keys, pushed emergency. Kill switches. Some added motion sensors behind cash trays. Others installed thermal alarms to detect abnormal marathon-level dispensing. For a few weeks, the graphs looked better. Losses dipped. Then the attackers adjusted. The next run hit older machines in rural branches. Then private ATMs tucked into hotel lobbies. Then a wave that targeted units at airports where the crowd made uniforms hesitate. Law enforcement formed task forces with names that sounded like movie titles. Meetings filled with acronyms. Diagrams spread across projector screens, arrows between countries. Timestamps stacked like piano keys, showing dozens of machines going hot within the same 5-minute window. Analysts traced money as it fractured and dissolved. Part of it became cars and apartments. Part of it turned into crypto. Part of it simply disappeared into the cash economy where serial numbers go to forget. One night in Prague, an unmarked van idled across from a bank as a plainclothes team waited for a tip to turn into an arrest. The ATM on the corner was quiet. Then a text came through. Now. The machine woke like something startled from sleep. The first bill slid out. A young man stepped forward, hesitated, looked at the street, and froze. The van doors flew open. Officers swarmed. They got him, and with him a phone full of instructions. But the messages were already dissolving. The sender's account, a ghost. When investigators replayed the night's map, other dots flared in. Other districts, while the team was busy with their single arrest. The orchestra never stops for a broken violin. Banks started doing the math out loud. Losses in the millions. Insurance premiums rising. Public statements promising enhanced protections. Behind closed doors, executives stared at a quieter number. Minutes, how many it took from the first. Abnormal dispense to a branch manager's call to IT, to a technician's login to a decision. The attackers weren't just exploiting software. They were exploiting time dot in response. Some institutions tried something different. Deception. A few machines were seated with honey cash-trackable notes or fitted with silent counters. That marked each abnormal dispense without stopping it, buying intelligence at the cost of cash. Others used beacons hidden in a TM chassis to ping when a door was opened or a dispenser ran beyond normal cycles. The aim shifted from stopping every loss to catching the rhythm, learning the tempo, so the next wave could be met at the downbeat dot. Then came the night that proved the game had escalated. It started in Warsaw, rolled to Madrid, blinked in Sao Paulo, and finished in Manila, one sweep across the map in under an hour. Different banks, different brands of machines, same choreography, cashers in place, phones in hand, machines that suddenly forgot how to say insufficient funds. By sunrise, internal hotlines were jammed, and inboxes filled with 2 words no banker wants before coffee. Coordinated event. Somewhere, in a room that wouldn't show up on any lease. A small team watched the same sunrise through tired eyes and empty takeout boxes. A laptop timer hit 0. One of them clicked stop on a panel of green dots. Quiet returned. The world pretended nothing had happened. ATMs whirred back to their polite hum. Lines formed as usual. But inside war rooms and windowless offices, nobody pretended anymore. This wasn't about one bank, one city, or one machine. It was about who controlled the pace and who was always a step behind. And then, as if to underline the point, a tip reached investigators about a new kind of run-one. It didn't require anyone to stand at a machine at all. The first reports came quietly, almost like urban legends. A man in Manila stood in front of an ATM at 2 a.m., inserted a plastic card with no bank logo, and within minutes the machine began spitting out bills stack after stack until he walked away with a duffel bag full of cash. Hours later, a nearly identical scene unfolded in London. By sunrise, videos from Madrid, Moscow, and New York surfaced on encrypted forums. Men in hoodies laughing as ATMs poured out money, as if the machines themselves had gone insane. Banks initially dismissed the incidents as isolated jackpotting. Attacks, physical hacks, where criminals cracked open ATM hardware. But investigators quickly realized this was something new, something bigger. The machines weren't being forced. They were obeying. Every cash dispenser, whether in Asia, Europe, or America, was following the same invisible command: cybersecurity. Teams dug into transaction logs, but what they found was more terrifying than they expected. The withdrawals didn't trace back to stolen credit cards or fraudulent PINs. Instead, the ATMs were receiving legitimate-looking instructions from what appeared to be their own central banking networks. To the machine, the order to dispense $20,000 was as real as if it had come from the bank's main server. But here was the twist. The signals weren't coming from the banks at all. Somewhere, someone had wormed their way into the very software that coordinated ATM traffic across the globe. It wasn't a virus in the sense of old-school malware. It was a mirror network, a shadow infrastructure running parallel to the official one. To the banks, it looked like everything was operating normally. To the machines, it was an alternate chain of command. Interpol gave it a coding name. Silent Raindrop. The hackers behind it were orchestrating their heists with surgical precision. Cash-out mules were deployed worldwide, waiting for text messages, with a time and machine code. At the exact second, dozens of ATMs across different countries would empty themselves in synchrony. Within 15 minutes, the operation would be over. The mules would disappear into the night, carrying bags stuffed with millions, and the machines would go back to functioning normally, as if nothing had happened. Some investigators compared it to a military strike. Others whispered it was too perfect to be ordinary criminals. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. Could this have been the work of a rogue nation, testing its ability to disrupt global financial systems? Could a single command have collapsed confidence in the entire banking infrastructure? One detail kept everyone awake at night: the hackers never drained accounts. They never targeted individuals. The money always came directly from the ATM's reserves cash that was supposed to be replenished daily by armored trucks. This wasn't just theft. It was a statement. Whoever was behind Silent Raindrop was showing the world how fragile modern finance really was dot by the third wave of attacks, totaling over $40 million stolen in 72 hours. Governments could no longer stay quiet. Emergency meetings were held in Washington, Berlin, and Tokyo. The phrase Digital Pearl Harbor began appearing in leaked memos. But amid the panic, one pattern started to emerge. The attacks weren't truly random. Every city hit by Silent Raindrop corresponded to one of the world's major financial hubs. It was as if someone was drawing a map connecting dots across the globe, leaving breadcrumbs that only the most careful observers could follow. And buried in those patterns was a signature, an almost playful fingerprint. Each heist, regardless of country, ended with the ATMs printing one extra receipt. On it was always the same line of text in English. Who really owns your money? The message wasn't just a taunt. It was a warning. And soon someone would discover who or what was really behind it. The more investigators tried to track Silent Raindrop, the stranger it became. Normally, cyber attacks left traces IP addresses bouncing across countries, malware signatures, or compromised servers. But this? It was slippery. Like chasing smoke through wires. Every attempt to trace the commands ended in places that didn't make sense. A laundromat's Wi-Fi router in Brazil, an old university server in Hungary, even a weather station in Canada, hadn't been updated since the 90s. It looked random too random. But hidden inside that chaos was a disturbing pattern. All the signals came from systems already trusted by global banks. In short, the hackers weren't breaking in. They were piggybacking on what was already inside. A breakthrough came from a quiet analyst in Singapore named Mei Lin. Working through thousands of ATM logs, she noticed something chilling. Before every Silent Raindrop heist, a mysterious data packet pinged the machine exactly 17 minutes before the cash started pouring out. The packet looked harmless, just a diagnostic check, but it carried a hidden code that swapped the ATM's point of authority from the bank's real server to the hacker's shadow network. May described it as teaching the ATM who its new boss is. That discovery gave investigators their first real lead. If they could catch the packet mid-flight, maybe they could trace it back. But the hackers were already anticipating this. When agents tried to intercept, the packets scattered across thousands of nodes, splitting and reforming like digital mercury. Then came a breakthrough from Germany. An ATM in Frankfurt malfunctioned mid-heist, freezing with half a stack of bills sticking out. The mule panicked and fled, but the glitch left the diagnostic packet partially exposed in the system. When forensic teams tore it apart, they found something horrifying. Inside the packet was a digital watermark, a signature that shouldn't have been there. And it wasn't a name or a number. It was an emoji, a simple, mocking ghost face. That's when the whispers started. A hacker collective known only as Phantom Nexus had been rumored about for years. Ghosts of the cyber world. No photos, no confirmed identities, only breadcrumbs in forgotten forums and encrypted chatrooms. Their philosophy was as radical as it was terrifying. Money is code. Control the code, and you control money. And now it seemed they were proving it. Interpol tried to set traps, staging fake ATMs with hidden tracking devices, hoping to lure the mules. But the hackers adapted instantly. In one infamous case in Mexico City, an ATM loaded with baked cash lit up on surveillance. But when the mule opened the cash tray, it was empty. Instead, the receipt printer spat out a single sheet. Nice try. It was a game of chess, played at the speed of electricity. And the hackers were always 3 moves ahead. But the more the attack spread, the more reckless Phantom Nexus became. During one heist in Dubai, an ATM didn't just spit out cash. It glitched and began printing code on receipts, strings of text that looked meaningless. Until someone noticed the words embedded inside. Next wave, not ATMs, banks themselves. For governments, that was the nightmare scenario. If the hackers could jump from ATM networks into the bank's core systems, they wouldn't just steal money. They could rewrite balances, erase debt, or collapse entire economies overnight. A joint task force was formed. The U.S. Secret Service, Europol, and cyber agencies from Japan, Singapore, and Australia. Their mission: hunt Phantom Nexus before the next wave began. But hunting shadows meant they had to bait the ghost. They needed to step into the same dark web chat rooms, mimic the same language, and set a trap convincing enough to fool the uncatchable. And when the trap was finally laid, one detail would shock everyone, because Phantom Nexus wasn't just hackers in a basement. It was something bigger. Something much closer. In a dimly lit cyber forensics lab in Brussels, screens glowed with code as analysts from 5 countries gathered. They had built a ghost ATM, a fully functional machine, but one that wasn't connected to any real bank. Its only purpose: to lure Phantom Nexus into trying their trick. Hidden deep inside the code was a digital snare. If the hackers injected their control packet, the machine would flip the signal back and tag its origin like dye in a water system. For days, the ghost ATM sat online, untouched. Analysts grew restless. Some believed Phantom Nexus was too smart, too careful to take the bait. But then, at 3:17 a.m. on a rainy Thursday, the machine came alive. It began printing receipts. First, strings of numbers. Then words. Finally, a mocking message: "We see you." The room froze. Every alarm screamed at once the packet was in. For a brief second, the trap held. The signal traced through Europe, jumped to a relay in Asia, then curved back toward North America. And then it stopped, not vanished. Blocked. Someone had killed the connection mid-trace. At first, investigators thought the hackers had spotted the trap. But when they dug deeper, the truth hit harder than any of them imagined. The trace hadn't been cut by Phantom Nexus. It had been cut by a firewall inside one of the very agencies running the task force. The ghost wasn't just out there. The ghost was inside. Weeks of digging uncovered what everyone feared: Phantom Nexus wasn't just an anonymous hacker collective. It was a hybrid network: rogue insiders at banks, corrupt engineers at ATM manufacturers, even a former intelligence officer who had once designed secure financial protocols. They weren't breaking in from the outside. They were rewriting the rules from within. And the most shocking discovery? One of the key nodes traced back to an office in London, an unmarked building, leased by a cybersecurity contractor that had been hired to help investigate Phantom Nexus. The hunters had been feeding the hunted. The revelation forced governments into silence, admitting that insiders had helped orchestrate one of the biggest cybercrime waves in history, would shatter public trust in the banking system. So quietly, arrests were made. Some low-level mules went to prison. A few engineers vanished into undisclosed facilities. But the names tied to the highest levels, those were never revealed. The public was told Phantom Nexus was disbanded. The attacks stopped. ATMs no longer spat cash onto the sidewalks. For most people, it became just another strange story in the news cycle. But those on the inside knew better, because buried in the last intercepted packet after the ghost ATM trap was a final encrypted message. When analysts decrypted it weeks later, it wasn't a threat or a taunt, but a promise. ATMs were only the rehearsal. Next time, it's the stage. Today, cyber experts still debate what that means. Some believe Phantom Nexus truly dissolved, its members scattered. Others are certain the network went dark, only to wait for the right moment. And with every new glitch in the financial system, every unexplained outage, the same question lingers. In the minds of investigators, what if the final wave hasn't started yet? Now the question is for you. If you knew a hidden group could pull money or data out of the system at will, would you rather expose it to the world? Or keep it quiet? To avoid chaos? Sometimes the scariest threats don't come from guns or armies. They come from keyboards. Phantom Nexus showed us that money, trust, and even the rules of the system can be rewritten with a single line of code. But if they called the ATM attacks just a rehearsal, what's waiting for the main stage? Do you think the world is ready for the next wave of cyber warfare? Or are we already too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments.